my mindset and my approach to it was not right. I wouldn't say wrong, but it was not right. Um, so that was a very difficult experience for me. It took a big hit on my mental health. I think by the third attempt, I would say I was depressed. I was really low in mood because I think I had so much internalized that failure, and I didn't see a way out of this situation of just repeated failures, of just being on the margin. I know you kind of make these stories in your head like, oh, if I got 120 or if I failed really badly, I would understand, but just to be on that margin. And I was angry at the RCGP. I was not like, overtly angry, but I was like, oh, this exam doesn't make sense. This is stupid. This is this is, you know, how can they do this? There's no standards. This that. Just name it. I had it. I wouldn't. Actually, I'll go into details of all of that. I was angry at the um, RCGP because they set this exam that I felt was quite arbitrary in terms of the expectation. The responsibility was just put on you to do so much, find the right cases, find the right patient, as luck will have it, be in the right surgery and all of that. So I was a little bit angry with that. I had symptoms of anxiety. I couldn't string two sentences together. I had to pause. My speech was slow. I was absent-minded. And all the things that you need to excel at the exam, which is to be present, to be witty, to be just in that moment, take a quick history. I still have the book. One thing I wrote down was I need to pass the RCA.
Welcome back to RCA in Focus. In this series, we dissect the strategies, tactics, and tools to help you crack the RCA. I know you've been enjoying the success stories of registrars who've cracked the RCA. Today, we've got a special story. This is a story of Dr. Inamuna Beregha. He's an IMG doctor who struggled so much with the RCA. He failed the RCA 4 times and was given one last chance to receive the RCA. It has been interesting to see him progressing and how he actually managed to pass the RCA in his 5th attempt. If you're struggling with the RCA and need help, then book a call with me to see whether I can help you. Click the link down in the description below to book a call with me. Without further ado, let's get right into the interview. Welcome back on this channel. Today I've got a guest who has been here before on the channel. Would you like to introduce yourself, Dr. Inamuna Beregha?
Hello everyone. My name is Inamuna Beregha. You can just call me Ina. I'm a GP in the Northwestern Preston at the moment. Yeah.
Great. So last time you came on the channel, we discussed about your preparation with the RCA. We dive deep into the strategy, the tactics. If you're preparing for the RCA, you can watch that video. That's very insightful. A lot of other people who've watched this video have found it very insightful. Today, we're going to focus on the inner work that Dr. Inamuna has made when he was going through obstacles and mindset, and we're going to talk about his transformation. So tell us a little bit about your story, Inamuna.
Yeah, it's been, or should I say, it was an interesting 18 months, I think, from June 2020 up until February 2022. I think my initial expectation was to do the CSA of May that year. So I had gone to the course. I knew that the exam was scripted, so I kind of knew what to expect. So I had that mindset. But then COVID happened, and things changed a lot. But there was the second RCA sometime in July of 2020, and I decided to go for that RCA because I said, why not? I'd been preparing for the CSA, and I felt I was ready, and I went ahead with the RCA. Unfortunately, I didn't pass that exam. And one thing I did was I said, okay, I didn't pass by a couple of marks. I think pass mark was 143. I got 141. So I said, okay, why not? Why not go again? Because I was just a mark short. And the second time around, I think I scored less. I scored 138 and the pass mark was 144. So I think that started a spiral for me, because obviously now I failed two times. From this confident mindset I had, going into the exam, and I failed two times, and my confidence took a big hit. Um, and I think I started to internalize this failure, as I would call it at that time. I internalized that failure. It had a big hit on my confidence, because initially, I didn't pass one case. I was like, okay, maybe it's the case low challenge, as they call it. And that was a cycle I repeated for quite a few times without kind of pausing to be more strategic, I guess. I was just saying, okay, if I was one, few marks away, a couple of cases would do it for me, things like that. And by the fourth attempt, I think I did some work by the fourth attempt, to be like, okay, where am I failing? But after the fourth attempt, I just had to take a big break, pause, deconstruct everything, and I realized that it wasn't just the exam that was difficult, but my mindset and my approach to it was not right. I wouldn't say wrong, but it was not right. Um, so that was a very difficult experience for me. It took a big hit on my mental health. I think by the third attempt, I would say I was depressed. I was really low in mood, because I think I had so much internalized that failure, and I didn't see a way out of this situation of just repeated failures, of just being on the margin. You kind of make the stories in your head like, oh, if I got 120 or if I failed really badly, I would understand, but just to be on that margin. And I felt like, what can I change? I had symptoms of anxiety. I couldn't string two sentences together. I had to pause. My speech was slow. I was absent-minded. And all the things that you need to excel at the exam, which is to be present, to be witty, to be just in that moment, take a quick history. I was in a state where I couldn't do that at all. So that was my story. But on the more positive, note, um, which we will talk about some more. There's some things that I managed to do that really turned things around, and like I introduced myself earlier, I am a GP now, so that's basically the initial thing. Yeah.
Yeah, I can only imagine how difficult it is after failing not once, not twice, not third time, fourth time as well. And the stake is getting higher and higher and higher, and the pressure on you is also mounting. So, in that headspace when your confidence took a hit, could you tell us a little bit about the self-talk? What were the things that you were thinking, and what were you telling yourself?
Yeah, I think there was one thing that I did, which really, just made that spiral worse, was making the mistake of internalizing failure. So I think as a doctor, as doctors in general, we all do this. We're kind of perfectionists, because we deal with life and death. We're a little bit hard on ourselves. Standards are generally high, I would say. So I think I had kind of tied my performance or my identity as a doctor and what I do, or how I do what I do, to my identity as a person. And I felt like, okay, if I'm doing well as a doctor, then I'm doing well as a person. So that was very close. So when I wasn't doing what I felt was me, I going into that exam, I was acting like a doctor, speaking like a doctor, being in that mindset. When I was failing at that, I felt like a failure, and it affected every other part of my life. So I hope I'm answering the question. Well, that was what was going through my mind. like I'm failing at this, and then you start getting this little voice that we all have. Negativity sets in, becomes a habit, and yeah, just internalizing that failure mindset. Oh, if I didn't pass the first 3 times, I'm not going to pass the next man. What's the point? All of those. Um, that was the main thing. Internalizing failure, having that mindset of failure. Yeah.
Yeah, I think these little voices is something that everyone do get, and then it's how much importance you give to these little voices, and you can amplify it. And from what I'm hearing, sounds like this is something that was clogging your mind, and you were thinking about that a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. That was. But there are many other things, but that was the main one. Yeah.
So, what inner work have you had to do, Inamuna, to try and overcome this and build your confidence back?
Yeah, yeah. I think I'll be very honest here. Before I got to do the inner work, I had to recognize what was going on. I had to be very honest with myself. So because I'm an analytic person, I would say I'm quite reflective. Um, I realized that I wasn't going to go beyond what I believe. So I was going into work um, kind of a little bit angry. I was angry at the RCGP. I was not like, overtly angry, but I was like, oh, this exam doesn't make sense. This is stupid. This is this is, you know, how can they do this? There's no standards. This that. Just name it. I had it. I wouldn't. Actually, I'll go into details of all of that. I was angry at the um, RCGP because they set this exam that I felt was quite arbitrary in terms of the expectation. The responsibility was just put on you to do so much, find the right cases, find the right patient, as luck will have it, be in the right surgery and all of that. So I was a little bit angry with that. And then to an extent, I think this is one issue that many people have. I was maybe not happy with the patient. If I'm asking a question and they're digressing, you naturally, when you're rested, you're not burnt out, you just take that in stride and redirect. But there was this inner little bit of anger at that's not what I asked. I was angry with myself because I couldn't put the two sentences together. So I recognized that pattern, that anger that I had was me giving my power and responsibility away to someone else. I made other people responsible for how I felt. I was just responsible for everything. So that was me giving my power away. So that's something I had to identify and go like, this anger is not serving me. And then the other thing was maybe I was a little bit in denial about my mental health challenges because I was sleeping, I was eating, I was trying to exercise, but then, you know, water, everything tasted like water. I couldn't sleep. My mind was racing. I'm in the consultation and I have four thoughts going and catastrophizing, just basically all of that. So that I had to recognize that also. So I recognized all of these things, but before I got to a place where I could start doing some inner work, I think I had to contact my GP. So I spoke to my supervisor about my challenges. She was very supportive. I also spoke to my GP. I contacted, did some CBT initially just to manage that failure mindset from a CBT perspective. I also took some medications for a while and to deal with the anxiety. And I think that gave me the mind space to kind of take more responsibility, kind of put things in perspective a lot, really. So that's what I had to do. I had to seek help to manage my mental health, manage the symptoms of anxiety, and then started little by little. So one thing I did was, again, I identified, took some responsibility, started to reframe these things. I really focus on anger, for example. I know that I speak to a lot of people that are kind of just angry with the exam, just angry about the exam. It is a very stressful period, no doubt. You can't overstate how stressful and difficult the RCA is. But there was one thing that I did was, and most of the insights I had were from books. I think I'll just name two books. I'm not selling those books or anything like that, but by promoting them. But one of them was a book by an author called Tibor Maurice, which is called Mastering Your Thinking. And then I also read a book by Maxwell Maltz called Psychocybernetics, and it was just the same thing. And my takeaway from the first book was I am responsible for my, like, no matter how low I am, it is still my responsibility, the way I'm thinking and what I do. And then the second book, my takeaway from that book was kind of affirmations to kind of, because if I'm telling you that, oh, I was having this thought and then change it, the question is how do you change it? My takeaway from that book was basically words. So I just kind of took time to create a personal affirmation and made it a routine. So in the morning when I wake up, I say, before I start my, surgery, or I record and I say it, and that kind of set up my expectation and things like that. So it improved gradually. It didn't like improve drastically. I would say I kind of managed my expectations to be like, okay, 1% gain per week, on each section. So that was the initial process. Obviously, in hindsight, I can be eloquent about it, but it was a very difficult, mashed up process for me. Yeah.
Absolutely. So the three P's that Martin Seligman, who is a psychologist, talk about when people are experiencing a very difficult setback or some sort of difficult situation in life. The first one is personalization. As you said, you personalize things and your identity as a doctor. So because you failed the exam, you're feeling like you're not very good as a person. The second one is permanent. So because the situation is being really terrible, we think that it's going to be a permanent thing and we can't see light at the end of the tunnel. But this is something where it's very important to realize that when you zoom out, you get more perspective. You find out that this is only temporary and it's not going to be permanent. And last is pervasiveness. So when one thing is not working in one aspect of our life, we might spread it to other aspects, and it's just pervasive. But if we realize that this is just one aspect and doesn't mean that we're doing something that's not working in other aspects of our life, then we can compartmentalize that. So it sounds to me that you've had a lot of awareness and you managed to recognize your emotion, and you've managed to actually regulate that emotion. And instead of being like a victim and being angry to the RCGP, or because the fact that the exam might not be as fair because different trainees are having different experiences depending on the level of support, the population of the practice. But what you did was you took responsibility. You made sure that you look after your health. You got in touch with your own GP. You got support. So you were making some good progress. So tell us more about what did you do after that?
So yeah, I think it really took some time. I would say this process where I kind of stepped back and did a lot of work will probably maybe from June, July, August, September, October, November. So it was a 6-month process. for me. I think one thing that I did, which was one of the best things I did, was to get outside of myself and to get outside of my head. Obviously, I did the coaching with yourself, but that was at a later point in time. I do have a community, in terms of, because of my faith. So that was something that I maintained. I maintained contact with people every week. I reached out to a couple of people that are kind of ahead of me in life, age, career-wise. And I think I just expressed myself, expressed my difficulties, expressed my challenges. And I think the mistake that we make sometimes is that in our heads we think that we are the only ones suffering, and our situation is the worst of all. And just being able to share it with people. I think there was a mentoring opportunity for someone, for a more senior GP, I think a partner to mentor someone. So I was on that mentorship program um, before then. So I kind of opened up to that person. I opened up to my life coach. I opened up to my partner about my struggles. And in a way, not when I say minimize, the challenge was minimized, not like they minimized it because it was a serious issue. My career was on the line. But when I got out of my head and just put it out there, I was able to kind of see more clearly. So definitely reaching out was one thing I did. The other thing that I did was um, I utilized this my network. It's the same thing essentially I'm saying, but the people were there. I spoke with them, but I made sure I kind of utilize my network. Um, and the last thing that I did was kind of just go back on my past experience. Because if you think about it, we have all had to write exams, go through medical school, go through, A levels, things like that. So again, it's that kind of story, through talking with people, talking about my life experiences, talking about, challenges and things like that. I was able to see clearly that, okay, I've been through other challenges. To be honest, I thought I was going to have more challenge with the AKT than any kind of clinical exam, because throughout my whole life with clinicals, I was comfortable because I could express myself, I could talk, I could communicate. Um, so when I passed the AKT with a reasonably good score, I put in the work and passed the AKT with a reasonably good score. That was a big bump in my confidence. So I think I also gleaned off some of that, positivity, I guess, from that whole experience to be like, okay, you know what? In my mind, I thought this exam was going to be one of the hardest things I could do in my life to become a professional. But then I put in the work and I got, the result, even exceeding what I thought I was going to have in the AKT. And if I could do that, then somehow, if I could replicate that in this situation, then I could get, a good result, or I could pass the exam. So I think those were a few things. So I think essentially I would say in that time I built my resilience, and we all know what definition of resilience is, but practically for me, it was utilizing my network, talking to people, reaching out, doing other things outside of medicine. I think in that point, I was still volunteering with some teenagers. Like on Fridays, I volunteer to with teenagers and youths to be like a group coordinator. I think I maintained that. My weekly, in terms of my faith commitments, I maintained that. And I think that helped me to kind of keep going and not just focus on this one aspect of my life that wasn't working. Kept on talking with people and things like that. So that's what I did as the next steps, I would say. Yeah.
Thanks for sharing this, because I think it's so important when we're facing a difficulty not to actually keep to ourselves, and it can be very lonely, even if you have other people around, but you actually open up to other people and lean into your network. So tell us, how did you cultivate a supportive network who were able to help you when you needed it the most?
Yeah, so I think that's something that I have always been good at, I guess. I think when you're having mental health challenges, sometimes it's difficult to be vulnerable because that takes some vulnerability. I don't know a better way to say it, but as a man, sometimes I just expected to be strong and to push through. And I think there's this stigma that maybe it's just a perception we have that if you say you're weak at this moment, that means you're a weak person, or if you ask for help, that means you can't handle the pressure. Like, how are you going to handle the pressure of being a GP and being, taking responsibility for thousands of patients if you can't, handle this responsibility? So that was a challenge. That was a mental block I had in terms of reaching out. That was part of the delay in seeking help because a big part, not the whole of it, a big part of my challenge with the RCA at later attempts was I was in the wrong mental state. I had the wrong mindset in itself, and that was a spiral downwards because of anxiety and depression. So it's something I just had to, again, from kind of reading books, and trying to take action on, some of these things that I was reading in these books. I just had to overcome that fear that, oh, what are they going to think about me? Are they going to think I'm weak? Are they going to think I'm stupid? You just have this, like you said, little voice that just tells you all this, the nasty things. So the mindset for me, I realized the power of mindset for, again, previous experiences. So I guess just reaching out to people and just putting myself in that position, because I reached out to people. I speak to, I'm not say a lot of people, to a few people that I can see there's a reluctance to let people in to help. Maybe it's shame, maybe it's guilt, maybe it's any of these things. I have done some work on that in the past, so it was easy for me to not deal with it, but be aware. And because of awareness, I was able to take steps to counter, these things. It wasn't easy to deal with. So I would say other people also helped me just gain more awareness of myself, kind of speak positively into my life, kind of reassured me, kind of reminded me of when things had gone right. And I didn't leave it late. So in terms of your question of, how did I do it? It was more of a regular catch-up thing to be like, okay, every 2 weeks I'll speak to this person, setting a goal, for example, to be like, oh, I'm gonna try and maybe be more positive, or I'm gonna try and just focus on one issue and then set that goal and then catch up with them to be like, okay, how did you go? What happened? Sometimes it's just encouragement. Someone just telling me a positive word, like, listen, you're gonna be fine. So it was different aspects from different people. But if I'm going to say anything to anyone listening, is definitely don't isolate yourself. Definitely don't leave it late, because when you leave it late, no one can really help you. So you submit the exam and then you submit for the RCA, and then you're telling me, for example, that, oh, I just submitted, it's had such a difficult time, this. I'm like, oh, well, all the best, the best of luck. So I didn't leave it late for that. I think for that fourth attempt, I didn't kind of leave it. I was like, okay, no, I'm gonna reach out.
Thanks for sharing these thoughts that you've had and how you actually manage to overcome these difficulties. There's one thing that you did mention about shame, about anger. I think a big part is we all have an ego, and sometimes this is what stops people from getting help. Could you tell us how you manage your ego?
Um, I wouldn't say I managed it um, very well. I think my past attempts, I think that was kind of a play on my ego because I just kept on going, going. But yeah, for the last attempt, I would say more than managing, it was more of kind of an awareness, and then just creating that awareness. And I think things fell into place after I just decided to become more aware. Because like you rightly mentioned, the ego. I think I did the coaching with yourself at a later point, and there was a point where I think you were giving me some feedback, and I was kind of arguing with you. Not arguing, but I was defending myself. I was like, no, this is, and then I think that awareness just made me like, what are you doing? What are you doing? Like you're seeking help for someone because I always use this analogy like I can't see the back of my head. I've asked someone to look at the back of my head, describe it for me so I can maybe cut my hair properly. And then I'm arguing with the person that is telling me to do this and do that. And in that moment, I automatically just put it aside because the ego is something that is very difficult to deal with consciously. So especially in a hot state, like when you're recording, for example. So for me, I kind of do it in a cold state, like when I sit down in the morning through affirmations. That's how I kind of managed it. Um, and the other aspect of the ego, which is interesting, is I was thinking about it this morning when I was thinking about this conversation we were going to have, was finding reasons outside of yourself to succeed. So my success or failure at that point was so tied to my identity that I couldn't see. When I started to speak with my family, speak with other people, speak with my wife, I still have the book. One thing I wrote down was I need to pass the RCA so I can focus on my family and I can spend more time with my wife, with my family. And that's something that has worked in the past for me. Just finding a reason outside of myself. And obviously in that moment, I wouldn't say I was doing my ego, but then in retrospect, in hindsight, I can see that that was me finding a higher reason that I need to pass this exam as compared to, I failed the first time. I'm in the same surgery. I go back. Oh, did you pass? No. There's a walk of shame for 2 days. You lift your head up. You come back again. You come back again. The fourth attempt. It really does you in if you hold on to your ego. So I think for me, it was just finding that reason outside of myself. So that's what I'm talking about cold and hot states. In my cold state, I just said like, see, what do I really want? Why do I want to pass this exam? And I was like, so I can become the GP that I knew I want to be. So I have a lot to give. I think one of my personal missions is to just give patients an experience of care. Everybody can read the ICKS, but if at least when they meet me, let them know that at least I cared. And I was like, okay, that's one. That my family was first. This was kind of second, and it was like, okay, this is just a stepping stone for me to accomplish all the things I want to do. So that was another way I dealt with my ego. So in summary, one way was when I was getting feedback I quickly realized that if someone is telling me something that I'm already doing, or you need to brush your teeth, instead of going like, oh, I brush my teeth. Okay, like I, I do brush my teeth. So I'm looking for that advice that resonates with me. That okay, that's if someone says, oh, you need to press your shirt, you need to brush your teeth, you need to cut your hair, and I do that, that shouldn't ruffle you. That should just be like, okay, I'm looking for that insight. I'm looking for that advice that resonates from everything we've said today, from taking responsibility to being aware. You know, it might be, yeah, you're all that, but what is that aspect that you might need to improve on? So that's one way to deal with the ego. And then also looking for reasons beyond yourself to succeed.
That's a big one. Yeah. When you give meaning to what you're doing and you can see the higher purpose, it gives you a superpower inside that helps you to go through when you're going through a very difficult time. So it sounds to me that you managed to find guidance and you are open to feedback and you've learned a lot through this process. Um, Tell me, what was the transformation? Because having coached you, I could see definitely there was a transformation from the person I first spoke to and the person you have become. Tell me what are the transformation that you have seen in yourself? Because you had to become a different person to pass it the fifth time.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you hit the nail on the head. I had to become a different person. Not a total transformation, but for me, you hear these words, doctor-centered, patient-centered, and all of that. The summary of all of these things I will say is depersonalize, depersonalize, depersonalize. Whether it is compliment or criticism, your good days or your bad days, just I did this psychological exercise of putting it away from my chest, basically through imagination. And that helped me take on um, what people were telling me. Like someone says, you need to improve this, you need to stop saying this word this way, you need to, as an adult learner, it can be difficult to take on feedback. But I just depersonalized most things, not taking criticisms to heart too much, not taking encouragement to heart too much. Obviously, finding the positive in the encouragement and saying, okay, if there's a consensus that I'm good at asking about psychosocial, then maybe that's not something I should. So I'm not saying don't utilize it, but I didn't personalize it like take it to heart too much because otherwise, if you take the compliments to heart too much, then you take the criticisms to heart more in that way. So I had to just depersonalize failure to an extent, depersonalize success. Um, the other thing I would say is, and this is something I'm going to try and explain clearly in a short space of time, is I think it's just responsibility. That's the word to capture it. It's just responsibility, taking personal responsibility for finding out the flaw, acting on it, changing it, whatever needs to be done. There were times where I had to write with a pen on a paper phrases by hand just to make that connection of writing it, make it like, mechanical, whatever it is. It's difficult to explain the science behind it, but I was like, no, I realized that this is what I had to do. If this is the phrase that makes this management plan sound shared, then I just write it down. And as an IMG, because I am an IMG. I didn't study here, even if I studied in Europe. But there's just that language bit that there's just that nuance that sometimes, let me use myself, I miss. And then through reflection, I think some moments I kind of capture it like, okay, I could say this better. Instead of being angry with the patient, I asked them if they had a headache and they're telling me about a knee pain. Like, maybe could I rephrase this? And then I go back and I think, like, how could I have asked that better? And then I think about it. And then once it comes, I capture it in writing and I maybe write it 20 times or say 20 times. And there's something that does to you. Just say, you know what, I'm not going to take all of the responsibility. Obviously, we all know about spheres of control and spheres of influence, but I think it's just identifying that circle of influence and just saying, I'm going to leave here, at least in my career, in my career. And I think we had a discussion a few weeks ago. That is something that I have been able to apply as a GP now in terms of the choice of career, in terms of my time and things like that. Like, okay, personal responsibility, essentially.
Yeah, that's a very important one, and it is so difficult. Sometimes people don't take responsibility, but if you didn't take that responsibility, nobody could have done this for you. It's just you had to do the work and you have to put in the effort and be accountable. So the question I want to ask you next is about the resilience, because I think resilience is definitely something that you had to build during this. So tell us a little bit, what have you learned about becoming resilient?
I learned a lot actually. I think resilience is an interesting one. I think in 2021 there was this leadership course I was doing, and I think that coincided with the time I was on a crescendo in terms of my mental health and things like that. But I think it's essentially how you respond to failure, how you bounce back after failure, how you learn from mistakes. For me, I would say it's having a growth mindset, having a growth mindset, just realizing that nothing is fixed, like the most resilient people that you may see on the earth, from Nelson Mandela to Margaret Thatcher or whoever you think is resilient, something that was built instead of just having this fixed mindset of I'm not resilient. When trouble comes, will crumble like a cookie. Just instead of seeing yourself as something that you can learn. And sometimes even in that situation, you don't really have to fail to become resilient. I think it's drawing on from previous experiences. Because again, that first book I read, How to Master Your Thinking, because my thinking was all over the place. I would admit it was all over the place. I was we can be judgmental of people that have, we shouldn't be, but we can be judgmental of people that have mental health challenges, whatever the diagnosis, to be like, just just get over it, just do it, just. But even I was aware that the thoughts I was thinking, they were ridiculous. Again, like you said, personalization. This is going to be permanent. I'm a failure. I can't do this right. If I can't do this right, that means I'm not a good father. I'm not this. It was all over the place. And in terms of resilience, it was a case of, if a thought that may be fact doesn't serve me, then find a way to delete it. And by delete, reframe. So I did a lot of reframing. One thing, again, I'll be honest there, one thing that was in my head was, oh, I'm not a native English speaker. When I speak, my accent is coming across thick. And the examiner is going to find that. It's ridiculous now, but oh, the examiner is going to find that, you know, maybe if I'm speaking to a non-native English speaker, and I'm also a non-native English speaker, this consultation is not one to submit, for the RCA. It's a ridiculous thought, because in reality, that's not what the examiner is looking for. They're looking for you showing your skill and things like that. So reframing a lot of these thoughts, deleting the ones that don't serve my ultimate aim of getting good cases to pass this exam so I can be the GP I wanted to be, was one way I gradually built, resilience. Deciding to have, 1% increase per week, focusing on one aspect. I had to kind of abandon any kind of arrogance and pride and just go back to basics. I started from my introduction. I'm not going into the technical aspect, but I'm just giving you an example of having that growth mindset, having that 1% increase, per time, to be like, okay, Monday, I'm just going to focus on this. Tuesday, I'm just going to focus on this. And then Friday. And I think that's how I was able to identify that one thing that I needed to do, which was, if I can't take a history in 6 minutes, I'm failing on the global tasks and I'm failing these cases by just going down to that basic, things like that basic structure of the consultation of each aspect. And then also overall just being like 1% increase. So resilience is something that can be built. That's the takeaway I would give. Something that you can draw on from past experience. Something that can be built. It's essentially having a growth mindset in the face of adversity, that you can and you will learn the skills that you need to face that challenge, even in that moment. Like we're talking about the RCA here. You might have feedback from your trainer, and the first recordings are just the feedback can be quite disheartening. You're like, where do you start from? But having that growth mindset to be like gradual, stepwise increase, knowing that skills can be learned, just that. And again, surrounding yourself with people that will maybe have a kind of toxic positivity, maybe if there's anything like that. So I kind of look for people that have that, because to counter my negativity until I get there. Sometimes you need people to hold your hand. And so I think resilience means different things to each of us in different situations, but definitely having that growth mindset, definitely believing that you can learn any skill that you need, whether you're natural at it or not, at least to pass the RCA, for example, in this, because we're talking about the RCA. So that's what I would say, growth mindset. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's so powerful when you constantly learn and improve and have this growth mindset. And if you're watching this, you're preparing for the RCA, or if you're going to prepare for the new CSA, this basic principle that we're talking about, that Dr. Inamuna is sharing today, it remains even if you're going to pass another exam, or even if you're going through a very difficult setback in life. These principles are going to be serving you, because it's very important to have the right mindset to be able to achieve what you want in life. So one other thing I want to talk about is you mentioned about the work that we've done together. So one thing that I find is that limiting belief is something that a lot of registrars of work with struggle, and the lack of confidence. So tell me, how did you find the coaching that we had? Was there anything that struck you, or was there anything that you found useful, or if it was rubbish, let me know as well.
No. I'll be honest. I'll be honest. I think initially, if I think about it, we're not. I don't know of anyone else that offers coaching. I don't know of anyone else that offers coaching. I can say that I didn't do any kind kind of course. I paid for the materials, I read through them, but I didn't think that one day of a course was going to make much difference to me because I had read the materials. I think I had those insights. For me, it was more of that transformational change I needed more than information. So someone else, that might be listening might benefit from a day of a course or anything like that. Definitely go for it if that's what you have identified that you need to do. But for me, because I had benefited from, a life coach, I would say, and I knew the power of coaching, which is basically setting a target and then, being coached to get to that target. And the way I understand coaching is you are basically drawing it out of me. If I'm coaching anyone else, I'm basically drawing that skill or that, energy, that whatever it is, that figuring out the way, drawing it out of me. So I think I already understood the power of coaching. That's why I went, for your cause because there was no one else offering that, and I felt like okay, that's what that's what I needed at that point in time. So that was kind of my motivation, and then during the course, I think let me just say I also had enough sense to be like I'm paying for the coach to coach me, so let him coach me. And I think the feedback that I got was very succinct. I was able to write them down as per sentences to be like, I think one thing you said was, for example, like I have the basic structure, but I need to maybe possibly think like a GP and I need to be more focused. I was like, okay. So I have the reassurance there, and I knew I kind of said I need to be focused in this area, this area, this area, and then I need to move on. And then I think there was an example of a gentleman with tiredness, and I think some possibly lymphoma or leukemia, and I needed to move on. And I said this in the past interview we did was like, okay, the next week, just that specific information to be like, okay, are we thinking about cancer here? Deal with it and then move on to the next. Just move on. Just don't overthink it. Just move on. And that was it. That was just that was it. I went to I went to record again and I was like, okay, take differentials here. And this is a lady, this is bleeding. What could it be? Is it a fibroid? Is it this? Is it this? Is it this? Ask in such a way that you're giving the patient a frame of reference, asking in such a way that the examiner will say, okay, you've sufficiently explored that, and then just move on. And that was like magic for me. So I would say that the feedback was specific. It was applicable to my situation, and I think it was. I had the privilege of doing it one week after the other, so I could build on the progress I was making. So that's essentially what I would say about it. Yeah.
Thank you for coming back again on the channel, Inamuna, and thank you for sharing your insights, the lessons, and how you actually overcome these difficulties in your life and grew from them. So for people who are interested about your story and want to get in touch with you, where can they find you?
I think you can contact me on LinkedIn. So you just see my name somewhere on the screen. You can just send me a message on LinkedIn. I'll be happy to network with you. Yeah.
Thank you. So if you have any questions or anything, you can just drop it in the comment section as well. Or if you want to contact Dr. Inamuna, then click the link down. There will be a link down in the description. Thank you very much again, and I wish you all the best in your career.
Thank you. It's been nice being on here. Hi everyone, my name is Dr. Inamuna Beregha. This is just a quick testimonial about Dr. Erwin Kwun's coaching program. I think I went through the coaching program in November 2021 because I was struggling with the RCA. I was on my fourth attempt. I had one last attempt, which was my fifth attempt. I had experienced coaching before then in terms of life coaching in general, just setting goals and things like that. And I had seen the benefit in terms of cutting through the fluff and then just going kind of straight to the point in terms of what you want to achieve. And then having the coach kind of encourage you to draw the solution from yourself. So I think I had a good experience of coaching and awareness of coaching before then. Found these videos on YouTube. Because of the challenge I was going through, decided to go through his coaching program, which was over 3 sessions over 3 weeks. I found it quite beneficial because the feedback that he gave was personal to me. I could apply it instantly. I think the feedback was also quite succinct. It wasn't like vague. It was very clear. I think I had the privilege of coming back to improve on whatever I had done, like the work we had done the previous week. I can put it in practice the next day of work or the next week while recording for the RCA or while recording for the exam, and also come back and kind of get more feedback. In that way, I was able to build on the progress I was making. So I'm just thinking, if you feel like coaching is for you, or you want someone to guide you through the process, if you feel like there's any kind of aspect of the consultation that you may be struggling with, or even if you're not sure of what is going on, what's wrong with your consultation, and you just need someone to explore that with you to get some coaching so you can find the solution and then act on it. It's a program I would definitely recommend.
If you have been struggling with the RCA and have realized that doing it on your own might not be the best use of your time and resources, then book a call with me to see whether I can help you. If I can help you, then we can enroll you on the one-to-one coaching program. But if I can't, then at least you'll get some insights in your preparation. Click the link down in the description below to book a call. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.